Well, with especially with experience, yes. At the beginning, that was my biggest challenge was to and fear, I would say, when I was when I was very young, when I started a new series of concerts with a new orchestra. I was absolutely terrified, to be put in front of a group of 60 or 80 or 100 people that I didn't know. And with the experience came just the joy. So I'm always happy to meet, especially a new orchestra. I'm very happy to meet an orchestra that I know very well. But was the Vienna Philharmonic. I was in May at the Staatsoper in the opera, and that was my 250th performance with them.
Amazing.
So of course, it's always a joy.
Good afternoon, Frederic. It's so great to meet you here on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Petra. Same here.
You are in your lovely studio, I see. So where are you based at the moment?
Well, this music studio is in the heart of Lorraine, which is not far from Strasbourg, not far from Luxembourg, so east of France. It's one of the wildest and not very populated. It's not a desert, of course. It's very green, but let's say there are not as many human beings as in the rest of France. So it's very calm, perfect to work. And here I've set this recording studio in the it was the ex city hall of this city hall of a village that has 92 inhabitants. Of course, it's not a big thing, but this used to be actually a museum, because the story of this village is incredible. It was destroyed during World War I and rebuilt by a donation of a rich American woman who was famous for being one of the first feminists in America. She was from a very rich family, but at the turn of the 20th century, and she insisted on her father, who was a very rich man, to build. She contributed to build the Vassar College in America, in New York, which is a college, an excellency college for girls, for women. And so she spent her life, she was living alone, she was single all her life, and she was devoted totally, she dedicated her life to charity. And during World War I, she was going with the Red Cross all around this, because I'm a couple of kilometers from Verdun, and Verdun is famous for being one of the heaviest battlefield of World War I. Mm-hmm. So Miss Belle Skinner, that was her name, Belle Skinner, was in the Red Cross and going from village to village that were one after another totally grounded by the bombardments and bombings, and offering not only help as a nurse, but as well as the daughter of an extremely rich man, with a fortune comparable to John Rockefeller or something like that. And funny enough, all those villages rejected our offer, because it's been bombed here a lot by the Germans, but as well by the Americans, by the English. So for the local people here, the Americans were not so welcome. And she came to that village that is on the top of a big hill, and the people greeted her with a big warmth, and she was touched. And the village was totally grounded as well, including the castle. And she rebuilt it, and that's why you have this sign, historical monument of the 20th century, which is quite funny to read. So that's the story of this village. And she insisted on having this city hall as the first, the city hall and the school, to be the first to be rebuilt, even if there were so little inhabitants, but there were more at this time. And now this has been, after this, the room where I am staying here has been the home of another incredible woman who was a painter of the school of Monet. And as many of those female painters, she was a bit put in the shadow by the big Monet and others. And she's been then rediscovered during after the Second World War, and they created a museum for paintings here. And then the paintings were all purchased by a rich collector who bought absolutely every single painting that was in this room. Wow. So he created, well, good for the paintings, because he created a room in the Nancy Museum, where she has now a home. And this room has been then empty for many, many years, many decades. And when I moved here during COVID, I discovered that this room was had a perfect acoustic, and I decided to create a recording studio, not only for me but for a lot of friends. We've been already making 4 CDs here, and I have been writing a lot of music to complete operas here. So
amazing, yeah.
it's incredible to be in this place that is so rich of incredible stories. You know, all of the stories are. You could make a movie.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's so interesting that that building attracts all the artists, because now you are there and you creating, and previously it was painting, and so it's amazing that it can be like that, you know, that building attracts the artist.
Yeah, that reminds me a little bit of, even if every detail is different, but a little bit when I was in music director at the Santa Fe Opera in New Mexico, there was the story of Georgia O'Keeffe, who was an incredible painter, was extremely popular in America. And she moved as well. She moved from New York and from the big cities. She moved to that little village next to Santa Fe and found this home where she spent the rest of her life painting, etc. And now the home is half a museum, but as half a residency for other artists. So it's important that I have a very good friend who lives a couple of kilometers away from Paris, in the first home of Monet before he moved to Giverny, and this fantastic house with this fantastic Japanese garden that he painted in the nymphaeas, etc. But he first had his home in a house next to Paris, and this home has been purchased by the state, but is given as a residency for artists as well. I mean, it's important. It's important. It can be sometimes challenging, or it can even be totally blocking some people to be aware that, oh my God, I am in the home of this or that. You know,
Yeah.
like trying to write music if you are in the house of Richard Wagner or something like that. It
I can imagine.
can be quite challenging. But it could be also. But when it's an artist that was a painter, I'm a musician, so it's complementary.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like we are giving each other a little hand. You know, she from the beyond and me from here.
Yeah. But do you? You said you also close to nature. So do you get inspired by nature?
Oh yes, by default, the calmness of nature. I'm not like those. I mean, I always used to say that the Viennese composers, especially of the 19th century, they were all getting their inspiration from the Wienerwald. You know, many stories of Beethoven walking for hours in the Wienerwald, Brahms, who was walking hours and hours in the Wienerwald, and you would meet him in between the woods, and he would not even talk to you because he was totally immersed in his thoughts and in his music. So that's I think the routine of a Viennese composer. I don't know today, but you used to be finding inspiration in the Wienerwald. So nature was very important. And I remember my first years as a student at the Mozarteum in Salzburg, where I was spending a lot of time, because nature is very, very deep and very powerful in Austria. And I realized in Austria you can only understand. That was my motto. You can only understand Brahms and Schubert if you walk in the nature. If you walk outside in the nature in Austria, then you will understand Schubert and Brahms. It's maybe a little bit exaggerated, but I think that's but again, you know, the first time I realized that my personal inspiration was going on fire, it was when I moved to New York. I spent 9 years in New York, and this city had an immediate result on my composition. You know, I've never taken any drug in my life, but I can imagine that what cocaine or some other stuff would do to me. But that was New York. You know, I didn't need any drug. I had New York, and New York was my drug. So to say that nature is indispensable to find the inspiration, I don't know. that can be either or. This can be either a walk in the wood alone with only the song of the birds, or it can be New York with this incredible hectic life and very loud mixture of people screaming and taxis honking and like, you know, the beginning of An American in Paris of Gershwin, you know. So that depends on.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've spoken to quite a few composers and also choreographers during lockdown, and they said the same thing, that sometimes they need that sort of hustle and bustle, you know, that everyday life to get the inspiration. And then also sometimes they need the quiet, you know, the really toned down atmosphere, and then they can create. So you have both.
And you have two composers that I absolutely cherish, and they are each of them are at one of the opposite of the spectrum. It's Gustav Mahler and Richard Strauss. So Gustav Mahler needed to be 2 months alone in his little Häuschen, you know, in his little country house, and he needed to be undisturbed for 2 months. And as he said, to go down inside of his own self, you know, very deep down into, like you take an elevator down to go deep into his own soul. And it took him a couple of days until he reached that point. And you have Richard Strauss, who at the opposite was always on the road, always conducting, always a music director here and there, and in Munich and in Vienna and etc. And he took some vacation, of course, but he had this discipline of whatever the day of the year, whatever the place in the world, he would spend 3 hours working on his composition. So there can be, as I said, there is no rule. It's just you know, what is inspiration? It's a big mystery. Yeah. I know that for sure the best incentive is love. That's for sure. When you're in love, even if it's a desperate love, even if it's like Wagner, who was always in love with something impossible, but he needed. That's the biggest incentive for a composer. I think a musician who is not in love cannot go anywhere, because that's the big fuel and engine for everything that we do. So whether it's real or it's in our imagination, but we need to be attracted by an image, the image of someone who gives you the desire to create something. That has been always the fuel of humanity.
Yeah, and I think also sometimes the unrequited love, you know, that brings that artistic, I don't know, creativity out of people. Yeah. But
a very happy life and a very happy love. It doesn't work, because you reach your goal. It's like a ship that arrived in its port. It's arrived. It doesn't have to go anywhere else. I think if you still have something to conquer, or to, let's say, you still have a destination, and that's where it worked. It's like a magnet. It takes you somewhere. If you've arrived somewhere, that doesn't work. And any creator that I can think of, male or female, always had that. Even I talk about Georgia O'Keeffe, who was single almost of her life, and especially until she lived until almost the age of 100. And at the end of her life, she was more creative than ever. She was living alone, except for a Winchester, because she was shooting the rattlesnakes or the coyotes that were sometimes trying to get into her house, or even a burglar. I don't know. But that's where her only companion was this gun, you know, this rifle. But she must have had some desire of an impossible, the other part of the soul. It's the other part of your soul that you're looking for when you're an artist. You're looking for something, the lost paradise, you know, anything like that. You know, anything that is missing to your soul and that you need to rebuild through creativity.
But now, Frederic, you're also an author. You also wrote and you talked about Mahler, Gustav Mahler now. And what was the interest actually to write about him?
You mean, are you talking about my novel or about the novel? Yeah, being Gustav Mahler. Well, it was because I had two reasons. First of all, the book is a fiction. It's actually sometimes a kind of can sometimes be funny. It's funny sometimes because Mahler was full of humor. So I wanted to do two things. I wanted to explain what I was doing in this time. I was working on the reconstruction and the restoration and orchestration of the 10th symphony that he left incomplete. And it has been already rebuilt, let's say, but not to my liking. I thought it could have been done better. So that's the reason why I did it. And I'm not the only one. I think there have been, I counted until nine other reconstructions before me.
Really?
Yeah. But none of them, I think, achieved the goal. So I worked on that, and probably my reconstruction is far from being perfect either. But while I was doing that, I was experiencing something very strange, like I had a voice inside of myself that the part of Mahler was in my head, because that's what happens when you work so much on someone else's stuff, and you start to have visions and hallucinations. And I was thinking, well, it would be funny actually to write a fiction where a composer, a Viennese Kapellmeister, is all of a sudden haunted by the real Gustav Mahler, who, for some reason that I explained technically, traveled through times and landed 100 years after his death into the head of this poor Kapellmeister, who all of a sudden finds himself with a genius inside of his head. So that was the first motivation was to put as a novel what I was really experiencing, and give the reader an opportunity to know more about Mahler, because I really read very carefully the 5,000 pages of the biggest biography that there is about Mahler, where there is absolutely everything you can know about Mahler. And I made a resume in 210 pages. And you learn a lot if you don't know anything about Gustav Mahler. I think you learn a lot about him by reading these little books, because my Mahler is very, very close to who was the real Mahler. And the second motivation was that I wrote previously a book that is more a scholar's book, I would say. It's called Music in Every Sense, but it's been translated by Böhlow in Wien in Auf der Suche nach dem neuen Klang. So looking for the new tone, the new sound, looking for the new sound or the new tone. And that book is a little bit more boring to read because it's very technical, but it was trying to explain to people who are not specifically musicians but know a little bit about music, how music was born, what purpose does it serve, where is it going to, what about contemporary music, is it difficult for the audience to apprehend the contemporary music, and where is music going to? So it's everything about music and psychoanalysis, music and neurology, music and everything. That's why I call it music in every sense in English. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking after that book, I said, why not to try to go a little bit further and explain to people what's happening in the composer's and the conductor's head when he's composing and when he's conducting. And I said, I don't want to write another scholar boring book, so I want to write it in the form of a novel. That's why that's the two incentives for me to write this novel about Mahler, to explain what I was doing with the 10th Symphony, and to explain to the people what they, if it's possible. Of course it's impossible, but what's happening in a composer's head when he's composing. Of course you cannot understand it, because I would not be able to explain it to you. Even if you put a gun on my head, I would not be able to answer to you what's happening in the head of a composer. It's a big mystery. It's like when you're dreaming, what's happening in your head while you're dreaming. So what's happening while you're composing? Well, you're composing. That's all I can say.
Yeah, well, I've also wondered, where do a composer start? Because it's like a blank sheet of paper, and somewhere do you find that the melody comes first in your head, or how do you start?
Well, I would go back to Mahler again, because Mahler said when he was 12 years old, I think, he was asked by his neighbor, could you give, because he was already playing the piano, so all the building could hear that he was playing the piano. The neighbors could hear that he was playing the piano. He was not a genius of the piano, but he was playing heavy. It was with a lot of temperament. So everybody would think, wow, this child, that's something. And he already claimed everywhere he wanted to be a composer. And one of the neighbors one day said, could you teach my little girl, who was a bit younger than him, could you teach her how to compose? And of course, he was not a composer yet. He was still a child, but he was very secure, So he said, of course, I will give her a composition lesson. And he explained himself. Mahler explained with his own words that I was telling this girl, all you have to do is improvise until you find something that you like. And then he realized, in an adult, he said, well, I realized that I gave this little girl the advice to do what most of the composers do. I mean, they improvised on their piano until they find a good idea. And I think it's the best method, because improvisation, I'm not talking about the jazz improvisers and those incredible people who improvise in concert, but every improvisation start to be a kind of trance after a moment. You start entering a kind of state of mind where you're not yourself, you're not awake completely, you start to be a little bit in a dream. And that's where the best ideas are coming. And all of a sudden you have an idea, you have music that comes on the top of your fingers, and you don't know where it comes from. And then comes the technique, the composition technique, to develop it, to make it, to give it a form. So the more intellectual process start, but the process of finding the idea is not intellectual at all. It's very spontaneous, and it's digging into your unconsciousness. The part of your mind that is not conscious, that is absolutely like in a dream. Because it's in the dream. If each of us in the dreams create words that are incredible, and when we wake up, we say, "Oh my God, where did I find that? Where is it coming from?" We all have inside of ourselves those incredible words that are ready to show off. But like a composer needs to develop techniques to have that happening during his daytime. Not only in the dreams. Or you can find an idea that happens as well, especially for the melodic or for the melodies. But you can have ideas, especially when you're walking. Actually, that's why the composers were walking a lot in the Wiener Wald, because actually even writers, they say it's either you're sitting and sipping a lot of whiskey, and then you find American writers love to say yes, I'm an alcoholic, of course, because I'm a writer. But or walking. But for me, for the music, I think walking is very, very good for finding an idea, or walking or swimming or anything that is as well puts you out of your own thoughts. Makes you go in a kind of trance. Yeah. And a walk can be hypnotic as well. A long walk can be hypnotic after a moment. Yeah.
And it's a movement, and it's also maybe a type of rhythm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
But did you, as a young child, already knew that you wanted to be a conductor? Because you played the piano first.
Yeah, a conductor, I don't know. My mother told me that when I was very, very young, like 3 or 4, I was standing on a chair and I was moving my hands whenever the turntable was playing music. But I realized that a lot of children do that. It's quite natural for a lot of children to start moving their hands and play the conductor, even if they have not seen a conductor. But all children have some kind of instinctive behaviors that are, I don't know, written in our DNA. I don't know where it is exactly, but it's instinctive. It's like my mother told me when I was 2 years old, I was to the hospital because I had some problems here. Some glands that needed to be removed. It was very at this time. All the children had that. When they had too many colds, we needed to have a surgery. I don't remember what's the name of this thing in English, but that's not the point. The point is that when I was in this hospital, my mother told me that I was pointing to the nurses doing psh, 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 like I had a gun, and there was no TV at home. So I was 2 years old. So there was no chance, no possibility that I had seen that, in a movie. So where did that come from? If not from a very, very old instinct that was coming back. So conducting and firing again. But I kept only with conducting, fortunately.
Oh, okay. Thank goodness for that. But you played the piano as a child?
Yeah, that's my first instrument. Yes, when I was 5. Yeah, and then the organ, because I loved the organ because it was for me like an orchestra. I think that's where my love for orchestra came from, because probably from the organ, or it's the organ that for me was anticipation of what an orchestra could be. But when I saw an orchestra the first time, it was after I started playing the organ, because I started very young. I was 9 years old. And I think my first concert with an orchestra must have been 10 or something like that. And it was quite, I wouldn't say it was a shock or something like it was a revelation, etc. But I found that incredibly exciting. And I realized, wow, it's like an organ, but with human beings. So I found that very beautiful. For me, the piano is a wonderful instrument. I play it every day. But I need the colors. I need a piano. A piano has a lot of colors, but in black and white, it's abstract. It's abstract colors. But when you hear an oboe, when you hear a horn, a string section, solo violin, then you have the real colors.
Well, for me, a conductor, actually, I'm always so fascinated about your work, because I find it so interesting that you can bring all these sounds together, all these different instruments that you can, you have the ability to make it sound like one sound almost. So
yeah, because when you study a score, the thing is that you have sometimes 60 lines, and you need to reduce them into one musical object. It has to be one thing, and it's like one image, and in this image are many signs, of course. And if there is a mistake or anything that you need to change or improve, it's because one element of this one thing doesn't work, or could be improved, or can be changed, or can be. So, but it's important. So many people ask me always the same question: How can you read all those lines at once? I'm not reading all those lines as one. No human eye can follow 60 lines at once. It's impossible. Yeah. So you need to learn them and know them very well until it's one object. It's one object, because there is a lot of doublings, and a lot of lines are doubling each other, and many times, for instance, the flutes are doubling the violins, and on the line of the violins you have 12 or 16 or 20 first violins, but it's one line. So that's the same process for all the score. It has to become one object, one musical object, and you cannot possibly follow 60 different objects. It has to become one object, and that's where you can find, for instance, if one player out of 120 players, if one player make a mistake, you can spot it immediately if you succeeded into having one sound, one musical object in your mind, and you're observing, and then in that one object, in that one picture, there is something that is faulty. That's how you learn the score. But if you try to follow 120 players simultaneously, you will never spot not only the mistakes, but the details that you need to work on, improve, etc., which is the purpose of the conductor.
But you travel all over the world, and you've conducted many different orchestras. Is it easy for you to get to sort of connect with the orchestra?
Well, with especially with experience, yes. At the beginning, that was my biggest challenge was to and fear, I would say, when I was when I was very young, when I started a new series of concerts with a new orchestra. I was absolutely terrified, to be put in front of a group of 60 or 80 or 100 people that I didn't know. And with the experience came just the joy. So I'm always happy to meet, especially a new orchestra. I'm very happy to meet an orchestra that I know very well. But for instance, the Vienna Philharmonic, I was in May at the Staatsoper in the opera, and that was my 250th performance with them.
Amazing.
So of course, it's always a joy. But as well, I must say, it's an orchestra that could be terrifying. I remember when I did one day a rehearsal with them at the Musikverein of Mahler Fifth Symphony and Bernstein Second Symphony. It was 5 years ago. I had already more than 200 performances with them, so I knew them very well. But again, it was Fifth Symphony, Mahler in the Musikverein, and I was totally terrified again.
Really?
Although many of them are friends.
Yeah.
But it was just the pure fact that I was in the Musikverein where Mahler himself was standing when he first made the Fifth Symphony sound for the first time. So it's very rare that I let my emotion overwhelm me to the point that I become terrified. But that happened to me again, That was 4 years ago. So
well,
even
a young conductor once said to me that the orchestra smell the fear.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And some of my good friends in the orchestra said, "Well, you look very very stressed. I mean, why? I mean, we're all friends, etc." Yeah, but and it was an emergency. I was jumping in for Zubin Mehta, who was sick, and that was a combination of all those things. Yeah, but that's true. And it's like I always used to say that an orchestra is like a horse. So you cannot lie to a horse. The horse feels immediately if the rider is afraid. Yeah, and then it can be terrible. It can be terrible for the rider.
Yeah. But what is it about Vienna? Do you think that musicians love to come here and sort of all aspire to come to Vienna?
Well, it's not exaggerated to say that it's a capital of music because I read recently a beautiful text by Stefan Zweig, who was already in Paris and would never come back to Vienna. It was in 1940. And he wrote a beautiful homage to Vienna, and where he explained all the story of Vienna, this Roman colony that was built as by the Roman army to stop the barbarians from coming from Mongolia, from all this part of Europe, of the east of Europe. So it was built there, but it was immediately. It became immediately very important for the culture, and Marc Aurèle wrote his memories. That is one of the most beautiful books of the Roman times. And then not very quickly, but like 1,000 years after, it started music to be there, and music became very important very quickly until it's an alchemy between the land, and you don't know why Vienna, why not Berlin, why not? But Vienna is totally a city of culture, of course, of any kind of culture, of painting, of literature, of etc. etc. But music became the most important thing, and Zweig explains how even in the political sphere, like the emperors were always giving the priority to the musicians, and there were some very important aristocrats, princes, etc., who, especially the prince who was taking lessons from Beethoven, would let Beethoven insult him and call him names, when he would not do as Beethoven wanted. He would call him really names. See, you're an idiot, you're a donkey, he called him a donkey, which is in English I don't know, but in German it's not really du bist ein Esel, and he would even say him du, and the prince would have put to jail anybody who would talk to him like that. But it was Beethoven. It was a musician. It was a great composer. And when Beethoven was threatening to leave Vienna, all the aristocrats made a collect of money to be able to give him a pension for life, who was extremely generous. And Beethoven, of course, decided to stay in Vienna because they were offering him a lot of money, a monthly salary for life, with the condition to stay in Vienna. So that's how important music is in Vienna, and that's why so many musicians who are not from Vienna came to Vienna. Actually, you know that Zweig explained that, I didn't check that fact, but Zweig explained that Schubert is the only real Viennese composer. All the other composers came from outside Vienna. Austria, of course, but Vienna itself, no. Not Beethoven, not Mozart, not Schumann, but Schubert.
Wow.
Schubert was
I didn't know that,
Yeah, and when I hear Schubert, I can smell Vienna, and I spent a lot of years in Vienna, so it's almost my second home, and for that reason.
Yeah. But tell me now, and you've been to Dresden now recently?
For the Tales of Hoffman, yes. I've done quite a lot of Tales of Hoffman recently. I had this Tales of Hoffman in Dresden that I premiered. I mean, it was the first performance was in 2016, a new production. Then we had 2017, and then a long break. And now we are reviving that production. And immediately after the last performance, I went to Venice, which is my other second home.
Oh, really?
And I love Venice for the same reason, that music was extremely important in Venice as well. It has always been very important, and a lot of musicians went there. Wagner died in Venice, and a lot of great composers, all the great composers have been in Venice once or another time. And so the day after the last Hoffman in Dresden, I went to Venice for a new production of Hoffman again. It was a combination
And all this travel, the traveling, does it get to you? Does it tire you a bit?
I'm traveling much less than I would say a diplomat. Or when you see all those people, all those people who are traveling all the time for diplomacy, for politics, or businessmen, or I'm traveling much less than those people. I've been doing one trip to Riga in September, one trip to Dresden, and one trip to Venice. That's one flight every month. That's not so much.
Okay, so not too much.
No, I love to travel, but I don't like the hectic travels. Packing your coffer, you're packing your bags, and then unpacking, and then packing the next day. No, that I don't like. I like to be. I like to be in a place for a couple of time to have the time to to simmer, like we say.
Not the rushing.
No, because the rushing doesn't bring you anywhere.
Exactly.
And I realized, even for having so many concerts one after another, I did that when I was younger, but now I like to have the time to maturate, to prepare my concert. I see so many conductors today who are doing hundreds of concerts, and as a result, I don't see a lot of conductors conducting by heart anymore, which has been always my rule. I as far as I can, except when it's an extremely complex contemporary piece with tons of signs for every bar, where you cannot memorize it, except that if you spend a lot of, and it's not worth it. But except for that, I always conduct by heart, because I think it's a good discipline. It's showing respect to the musician. It's showing them, I know the piece. You can trust me. I know where I'm going. And all the great conductors of the past that I love and cherish, they conducted by heart. And I think it's not just to show off or something like that. It's maybe, first of all, it's making yourself available for watching the musicians. Furt Wengler, for instance, who is one of my gods, said, you have to watch the musicians all the time. And not like some conductors who conducted with their eyes shut, Well, you know what I mean? Even if he is one of my gods, but I think this idea of conducting with your eyes shut is not a good idea. It worked with him, but you cannot do it if you're not Herbert von. But I think conducting by heart is important, and especially with the opera, because the opera you have to synchronize the pit with the stage. You have tons of things happening all the time with the staging. So if you're not available with your eyes, you conduct a lot. A conductor conducts a lot with his eyes, So if half of his time is dedicated to watching a score that he should know by heart, what can he do? I mean, you don't have enough of two eyes. I would like sometimes to be a fly, with 100 eyes, one at a time around my head, and I think the musician would be scared. Sometimes they say that about Gustav Mahler, that with his two eyes he was sometimes terrifying the musicians.
Really?
Because he had an intensity in his look, in his glaze that was unique, and some musicians could not even breathe when he was staring at them.
Yeah. But I think also the audience sense that you do something, that you conduct with your heart, because I think this energy also goes to the orchestra and then also to the audience.
Yeah, actually, of course, you conduct with your heart, of course. But you conduct. The conductor conducts for the orchestra. Sometimes I've been asked, "Are you thinking of the audience Are you thinking of touching the audience when you conduct?" No, my job is to touch the musicians, and that's the musician's job to touch the audience, because it's like a pianist. The pianist needs to make music with his piano. He needs to communicate to the piano his feeling, and then the piano will communicate to the audience. And first of all, you're always with your back turned to the audience. I never see the audience except when I arrive, I bow, and then when I'm finished, and I bow again. That's the two only moments where I see the audience. So I have no contact with the audience. I have all my availability, all my money is to the orchestra. So I need to inspire the orchestra, and then they will send it back to the audience. But the audience will, the audience will be, of course, sometimes it's not a good thing, but the audience is watching the conductor, and sometimes they hear what they see. If the conductor is very motionless and cold, the audience can be embarrassed and think, "Oh, this guy is so cold," or "This woman is so cold," and we don't feel anything, because it's what they see. There were so many of my younger colleagues sometimes a little bit jumping too much and making a lot of funny things, but to impress the audience, which is another way of I think of being wrong, because you can distract the audience from the music. That's what, coming back to Mahler, I'm sorry, but it is my idol, And Mahler was famous for being extremely expressive with his body, extremely moving a lot, extremely versatile. When he was conducting the rehearsals, in the rehearsal, he would jump in every direction. They made caricature of him. Some people draw sketches, caricatures of Mahler conducting in a rehearsal. But everybody said that during the concert he was very economic, and he was moving much less and not jumping in every direction. He was extremely sober. He was extremely sober, because all the work has been done. The musician knew what they had to do, and he was not trying to. He was not trying to inspire them, because they were already inspired by the rehearsal. So they would give, and I've experienced that after I read that, because I always thought the conductor needs to be more expressive during the concert than during the rehearsal, precisely because he cannot stop and explain, etc. and he needs to as well to show the audience that he is. He needs to inspire the audience as well, because that's the big problem. The audience will be influenced by what they see of the conductor, and that's same
true.
with the pianist. Same with pianists. Same with pianists. My piano teacher Aldo Ciccolini was a great Italian pianist. And I dream sometimes they would shut down the lights of the concert hall and just put a spot on the hands, and the audience will only see the hands of the pianist, because sometimes I feel I have to do a lot of show to show to ensure the audience that I am inspired. Although I like to be emotionless, like Horowitz or like Rubinstein, who were some of the most incredibly expressive pianists, but they were not moving so much. They were not moving so much. So it's a problem. That's why I love the organ, because the organist is hidden and you cannot see the organist. You can only hear what he's doing.
But it is sometimes also distracting when somebody is really, doing all these gestures and it doesn't mean anything with the music, but it's then distracting, like you say.
Yeah, and some people, even professionals, are convinced, are excited by this, and they buy it. They buy it. Although, as you say, it has nothing to do with the music, and it's certainly too much. I mean, it's not needed. It's absolutely not needed, and it has nothing to do with age or experience. I think it's probably it has to do with how much insecure you are. I mean, when you are insecure, you need to show off, and when you know really what you're doing, you can do less. And certainly, I've not reached that level, but when you become a legend like Karajan, etc., you can barely move a little finger, and the orchestra would play incredibly well, because the blink of the eyes from those people, from those great conductors, can produce incredible results, when the audience will, of course, not see anything of that, because it's too small. It's too small. Yeah, at some point, some of those conductors, I think they conduct only with their thoughts. It's telepathic. It's telepathic.
No, but it's so true. But tell me, how do you wind down after a concert or an opera that you've conducted?
You mean, how do I cool off?
Yeah, do you go for a meal, or do you have a glass of wine, or is there something? Do you have a little ritual that you do?
No, I have no ritual at all. It can be either or. I just know that especially after a long opera, the longest the concert, the longest it takes to cool off. Because the level of adrenaline, it's probably like a sport when you do a long. I don't know about tennis players. I only know John McEnroe that I met one day with one of the Pink Floyds, and we talk about how much time it takes after a concert. It was Roger Waters who was the leader, the bass player of the Pink Floyd, and we talked about what do we do after a concert, the same as you do. And McEnroe said this thing that I found so true for conductors. Said, well, the longest the match, the longest it takes to cool off, and because you have so much energy, you must search so much adrenaline, so much hormones, going through your body, that it takes a long time to evacuate all that. So, spending hours reading, watching TV, going out with friends in restaurants, etc. It's certainly, sometimes I go home and just go to bed because I have to catch a plane the next day. Not recently, but I did that for a long time. But it's not fun. It's not fun after you had to interact with 2,000 or 3,000 people. It's not very funny to go home alone, and But it doesn't happen frequently. I mean, frequently people like to. It belongs to most of the rich. There is since you are in Vienna, there is a restaurant that stays open very late. I'm not doing any publicity here, but it's in Annagasse behind the Staatsoper. It's called Sole. And Sole is an institution in Vienna because all the artists of the Staatsoper, of the Musikverein, of the concert house gather, because it's in the center of this triangle.
Okay.
And it's a restaurant that stays open very, very late because you meet absolutely everybody there. And the last time I saw Rostropovich, that was there. The last time I saw Lauren Mazel, it was there. Or Pierre Boulez, or Daniel Barenboim, or even, Schauspieler, actors, you name it, and painters. So there is a part of nightlife that belongs to this kind of life. But well, in Vienna again, in Vienna, everything related to the music is different. And in Vienna, the restaurant, the cafe life is very important. The social life in a cafe. And the biographer of Gustav Mahler said that one of the reasons why he failed after 10 years and had to resign from the Staatsoper is because he didn't want to bind to that, to bow to this tradition. He didn't like that. He liked to go to the Imperial Cafe that was that was a bit further, but next to the opera, it was everybody used to go to the Sacher, but he didn't want to go to the Sacher. He went to the Imperial and didn't want to meet the critics. And it's not if you do that in Vienna, you don't survive very long, because obviously it's a long tradition since the time of Schubert. Actually, you had to go to the coffee where you would meet the critic, you would meet a politician, you would meet, and it's still very. We don't have that in Paris. We don't have the equivalent of that in Paris. But in Vienna, there's this cafe social life. Is extremely important. It's like the clubs in London. If you don't belong to a club in London, you don't exist.
I know Vienna. You have to be part of that social light, and no, I know about that.
And in Paris, it's at home. There are salons, there are musical salons. There are. It's more at home. It's I know that because I have a lot of friends in Paris who are very influential and very powerful, and they have their own salon at home where they organize their. I used to live 20 years on a houseboat in Paris, and that was my little salon where I invited regularly people. So it's happening at home in Paris, but in Vienna, it's definitely happening in a cafe or in some restaurants. Yeah.
Well, I love that at-home idea. I think that's very intimate. Yeah, it's lovely.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, if you read it's very difficult to find today, but the book, the recollections, the memories of Arthur Rubinstein, he was a very faithful and very, he was a very frequent guest of all those salons in every city of the world. He knew all the salons in Paris, in London, in New York, in Madrid, etc. And there was one of Coco Chanel, for instance. Coco Chanel had a very, very beautiful salon in Paris where she would organize concert, and you would meet Stravinsky, you would meet Horowitz, you would meet all those people. And he explained how important it was. And Coco Chanel had invented this incredible technique, an incredibly efficient technique. When she wanted to have a lot of fabulous people in her salon, she started to pretend, calling one and saying, she was calling Mr. A and saying, Mr. B is coming.
Okay.
Oh, he's coming. So then after she was calling Mr. B and said, Mr. A is coming. Oh, he's coming. So she would have both. But at the beginning, no, none of the two were coming. And it's a very efficient technique. I'm using it all the time. It works all the time.
Yeah, I'm going to try that.
Absolutely. When you want to invite someone that you could not possibly hope to have at home, it's enough to say, another person that is very important, probably for the first person, is coming, and then both are coming.
Yeah.
In Vienna.
Great idea.
I have a good friend in Vienna who was an incredible salon. She's called Sissi Strauss. I don't know if you know Sissi, but Sissi Strauss was one of the producers of the Metropolitan Opera in New York. And she had one of the best salons just next to the Metropolitan Opera. And after every performance, she was organizing a pasta party. So she decided when she moved back to Vienna, because she's Viennese, to move that salon to Vienna. And uh, sometimes she has 200 people at home. You know,
Really?
she can barely walk. You know? Yeah. So
Yeah.
she's very Parisian, you know, I would say.
Amazing. Well, it can be done in Vienna. So
Oh yeah, it can be done in Vienna. But the real tradition is again the coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frederic, now tell me, you've done so much already, but is there still wishes for you for the future?
Well, yeah,
Especially
of
now
course.
that we get to the new year.
Of course, you know, my most of my life is dedicated today to my composition because I signed 4 years ago with a universal edition in Vienna, which is the historical publisher of Mahler, of Schoenberg, of Bruckner, of etc. And now it of course gave a very nice impulse to my composition activity. So what I wish for myself now is to write more and more, and as a conductor to conduct my own pieces, which is of course always a big pleasure because I always used to say, you know, Brahms, Schubert, Schumann, they don't need me, but my babies, they need me.
Okay.
there are plenty of people who can do the classicals as good and even better as I do, but only I can conduct my pieces right now as they should be because only I know. And that's when you're a composer and a conductor, and sometimes it seems to be difficult for some people to accept that you can be both. But yeah, there are so many examples in the past. I don't know what is the problem. You know, what we are talking about Strauss, Mahler, and you name it. There are a lot. Even Wagner was a very good conductor. Berlioz was a very good conductor. I don't know where is the problem today. So to accept the last one was Bernstein, of course, Leonard Bernstein. So I don't know what is the problem of comprehending that you can do both. But well, that's it.
Well, I can imagine that it's nice to do that, you know, so because you know what you want, you know what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah, and it's just a great feeling. You know, I love to conduct. So for me to be conductor, it's a wonderful activity. It's something that I like it physically. I like it mentally. I like it. It's overwhelming. You know, it's an activity that takes your entire body. Playing the piano can be physical, of course, but you're sitting. You're moving only your arms and your fingers. You don't have to move your body too much. Otherwise, you can literally. You can derail. But conducting requires all the body. So it's like a sport. You know, it's creating endorphins. It's creating a lot of hormones that are the same than when you're doing sports. You just feel incredibly good, you know, physically and mentally. And musically, it's a fabulous feeling to see that you can impulse the music by just doing gestures. You don't produce the sound yourself. It's magic. Yeah? So I cannot give that up. But when, in addition, what I'm conducting is my own music, then it's a fabulous joy, you know, and it's a fabulous feeling. Sometimes it can be a torture when I realize that what I compose is not as good as I expected. But
oh, really?
I'm trying my best.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah, no, but it happens, especially when you start. But the more experience you have, and I would say no, it's like I have some friends who are excellent cooks, you know, professional cooks, and the 3 stars cooks. You say in America 5 stars, but in France the rating is 3 stars for the maximum. You know, the 3 stars Michelin, as we say, they all tell me that no, it's very rare that they have a bad surprise. They can imagine in their head a recipe, you know, and they cook in their head. I mean, it's difficult for people sometimes to understand, to comprehend that you can read a score and hear the music in your head. But for me, it's difficult to comprehend that you can cook in your head.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Some the big chef, they know exactly what will be the mixture of that fish with that herb, with that, and cook that way, and adding these and the other ingredient that nobody had mixed before, but they know already how it's going to taste and to smell. That's, for me, it's incredible. That
I can't imagine that. I mean, that doesn't happen to me. My creations always surprise me in not a good way.
Well, it's a matter of experience. As I said, the more you do,
Yeah.
The less is the probability that the result will be bad, or disappointing.
Yeah. But Frederic, this was so great to talk to you.
Same here. To have a very great pleasure to talk to you.
I would like to add a wish for you, and I wish that you could go to Cape Town and go to conduct in South Africa one day.
Oh, that's my wish. I had an opportunity a couple of years ago, and it was cancelled at the last moment well, because of COVID. But I really dream. Everybody who was there told me that it's one of the most fabulous landscape in the world, and the most breathtaking panoramas, and great orchestras as well. I've heard great reports about some colleagues about the orchestras there. And that's one of the part of the world where I've never been, and I dream to go.
Well, let's
cross the fingers. Thank you,
let you
Petra.
go soon. Yeah. Thank you very much, and have a lovely Christmas and all the best for 2024.
Happy Christmas to you and everybody in South Africa and Cape Town.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye, Frederic.